And yet, humans did not fight for glory. Every maneuver, every daring mission, was aimed at saving lives, both their own and those of the galaxy's survivors. They liberated planets thought lost, rescued civilians trapped on devastated worlds, and repaired systems critical to survival. The human approach was unlike any other. They combined courage with compassion, strategy with creativity, and defiance with hope. As Captain Liana gave the next set of orders, she felt the tide turning beneath her fingers. Prepare the Orion squadrons for a coordinated strike. Use the nebula to hide our approach. Target the command ships directly. This is our chance. Her officers nodded, hearts steady with the confidence that came from months of hard-earned victories. Humans had learned to fight, not just for survival, but to inspire hope. In the darkness of space, small human fighters moved like sparks across the void. Their enemies, once confident and unchallenged, now hesitated. Chaos spread through the Armada's ranks as humans struck unpredictably, exploiting every flaw, every weakness. What had once seemed impossible victory against a galaxy-conquering force was now within reach. And in that moment, Liana understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers. It was in courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to give in to despair. That combination had changed the tide of battle, and it would change the galaxy forever. The humans had begun to win. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Months of preparation, sacrifice, and learning had led humanity to this point. Captain Liana. Reyes stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, Orion's Edge, staring at the looming silhouette of the Zalarian command ship. It was a monstrous vessel, larger than any human ship could hope to match, bristling with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Yet Liana did not flinch. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and now they would strike when the enemy least expected it. Orion squadrons, prepare for jump, Liana ordered. Her voice was calm, but every officer in the room felt the weight of history pressing down on them. The plan was daring, almost reckless. A small fleet would slip through a dense nebula, invisible to Zalarian sensors, and infiltrate the heart of the enemy armada. Success meant crippling the command ship. Failure meant total annihilation. Pilots checked their systems, their hands steady on controls. Engineers adjusted shields and rerouted power to weapons. Every human on the bridge, in every ship carried the same thought. Courage was their weapon, and ingenuity their shield. The fleet slipped into the nebula like shadows, engines silent and lights dimmed, moving with precision born of countless simulations and real combat experience. As the human fleet approached, Zalarian sensors failed to detect them. The Armada believed the humans were nowhere near. And then, with perfect timing, the strike began. Human ships burst from the nebula, weaving through debris and energy storms, targeting critical systems on the command vessel. Missiles struck weak points, drones sabotaged weapon arrays, and fighters darted between the enemy's defenses like sparks of fire. The battle was fierce. Human ships were hit, shields flickered, and some pilots never returned. Yet every action was calculated, every maneuver precise. Lieutenant Marco Chun's squadron heroes who had survived countless skirmishes led a daring attack on the ship's energy core. They flew straight into a corridor of enemy fire, relying on speed, instinct, and improvisation. The Zalarians fired relentlessly, but they could not predict the humans' ingenuity. Inside the command ship, explosions ripped through corridors, and Zalarian officers scrambled to contain the chaos. Humans, trained to think differently, moved with fluidity. Engineers had rigged systems to overload, turning the ship's own energy against it. Every strike, every sacrifice, was part of a larger plan, one that no alien algorithm could comprehend. On Orion's Edge, Liana's hands shook as she guided the final assault. "Now, core breach sequence," she commanded. Human ships converged on the heart of the command vessel, launching synchronized attacks that shattered its defenses. The core erupted in a blinding explosion, sending shockwaves across the Armada. Massive Zalarian cruisers were thrown off course. Collisions scattered their formation, and their perfectly timed attacks fell into chaos. The Armada, once confident and relentless, faltered. Confusion spread through the ranks. Even their most disciplined officers could not respond to the unpredictable brilliance of human tactics. The tide had turned completely. The humans, though battered and few, had struck when all seemed lost and changed the course of the battle. As the command ship disintegrated, Liana allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief and pride. Humanity had done the impossible. They had faced extinction, and in the act of striking back, had become more than survivors. They had become legends. From orbit, The galaxy watched as the once invincible Xylarian armada began to retreat. Humans had not just won a battle. They had shattered the image of invincibility. Hope spread like wildfire to the survivors of countless planets, and whispers of human courage echoed across the stars. Liana looked at the stars, at the remnants of the enemy, and whispered softly, "We fought for our people. We fought for life. And we will never stop." Around her, the human fleet held together, battered but victorious. They had struck when all seemed lost, and the universe would never forget it. The Xylarian armada was retreating, a shadow of the invincible force that had once terrorized the galaxy. Humans, battered but unbroken, floated among the stars, their ships scarred by battle but still burning with life. On the bridge of Orion's edge, Captain Liana Reyes watched the retreating enemy fleet. Relief washed over her, but it was tinged with sorrow. Thousands of lives had been lost. Entire planets had been scarred. Yet humanity had survived, and in surviving, they had shown the galaxy something extraordinary. On Sol Prime, civilians poured into the streets, cheering, hugging, and crying. Children ran toward pilots returning from battle, their small hands grasping at heroes who had risked everything. Families found loved ones they thought lost. Even the other species who had fought alongside humans now looked at them with awe and respect. The humans had not only defended their home, they had saved countless others. Captain Liana moved through the command hub, acknowledging the faces of engineers, soldiers, and volunteers who had given everything. Every expression told the story of exhaustion, grief, and pride. She stopped by a console where a young pilot stared at the stars, still trembling from her first major combat. Liana placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave, we all were. And together, we changed everything." The pilot nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, a mixture of relief and triumph. The Thari Coalition, the Zanari, and other surviving races began to coordinate relief efforts, sending aid and supplies to planets devastated by the Xylarians. Yet it was the humans who led the efforts, guiding the reconstruction and inspiring hope. They shared not just technology, but courage, strategy, and the knowledge that no enemy, no matter how powerful, could crush those who refused to give up. In the quiet of space, Liana allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of every life lost, every pilot who had sacrificed themselves, every family torn apart. Humanity had paid a heavy price. But the galaxy now knew that humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, warriors, and guardians. They fought not for conquest, not for glory, but for life itself, and in doing so, they had become a symbol of hope for every species. Messages of gratitude poured in from worlds humans had never even seen before. Entire planets, once on the brink of annihilation, now looked to Earth as a beacon. "You showed us that courage matters more than numbers," one Zanari elder said. "That hope matters more than despair. That life is worth fighting for, no matter the cost." Humans listened, humbly accepting the honor, knowing that their fight had been for more than their own survival. It had been for the future of the galaxy. The stars seemed brighter now, as if reflecting the spirit of humanity. Captain Liana gazed out at the endless expanse, remembering the months of fear, pain, and struggle. She thought of the first attacks, the desperate improvisations, the sacrifices that had seemed unbearable at the time. And she realized something profound. It had all led to this moment. Humanity had not just survived. They had changed the course of history. In the council chambers of the coalition, leaders discussed the aftermath. They debated new alliances, reconstruction, and protection against future threats. But even as they spoke, one truth was undeniable. Humans had proven that courage, creativity, and relentless determination could defy any odds. The galaxy had underestimated them, and in doing so, had learned the most important lesson of all. As Liana turned back to her crew, she smiled faintly. Around her, humans worked tirelessly, rebuilding, planning, and preparing for the future. The fight had not been easy, and the scars would remain. But for the first time in generations, hope was stronger than fear. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged victorious. They had struck when all seemed lost, and the universe would never forget it. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of danger and wonder. And humanity, small but unyielding, was ready to face whatever came next. Because they were human, and nothing could ever break their spirit. The galaxy was dying, one planet at a time. Smoke and fire streaked across distant worlds as the Xylarian armada, an endless swarm of insect-like warships, crushed every resistance. No alliance, no fleet, no defense had survived their hunger. Entire civilizations had fallen, their cities reduced to ash, their people scattered among the stars, or gone entirely. Commander Vrel of the Thari Coalition watched the holographic projection in silence, his segmented hands clenched. Around him, other leaders sat motionless, their faces pale under the glow of red alert lights. Sol Prime, Vrel muttered. The humans' homeworld blinked on the map, a tiny blue dot surrounded by a sea of enemy forces. We cannot save them. We cannot save ourselves. His voice carried a weight that made even the bravest of his council falter. The fleet's remaining numbers were pitiful. Their largest warships were crippled. The humans, so much smaller, so untested in galactic war, were a fragile candle in the storm. The council chamber was quiet, except for the faint hum of failing systems. Leaders exchanged fearful glances. The Xylarians had no mercy. Their weapons could level continents from orbit, and their tactics were unthinkable, calculated by algorithms older than any living being. The galaxy's greatest minds had tried to predict them, to stop them, but nothing had worked. Hope was a word spoken only in whispers. Evacuation, suggested one elder from the Zenari collective, his voice shaking. We should abandon Sol Prime, gather what remains of the coalition fleets and flee. There is no victory to be won here. Vrel's gaze did not leave the projection. He thought of the humans not as helpless creatures, but as something else. Something stubborn. Something that refused to vanish quietly. Yet even he wondered if that stubbornness could survive against the Armada. Outside the council chamber, on Sol Prime itself, humans did not cower. Cities burned, skies glowed red from incoming attacks, and panic roared through the streets. Yet, even in the chaos, humans moved with purpose. Families carried each other to shelters, soldiers directed civilians through evacuation corridors, and scientists ran toward the heart of danger, not away from it. Humans argued, shouted, sometimes cried, but they never surrendered. In a small command room, Captain Liana Reyes stared at a bank of monitors. Every screen showed destruction, satellites exploding, orbital defenses failing, fleets being torn apart. Yet her fingers moved quickly across controls, rerouting power, coordinating ships, calculating angles. Every loss taught them something. Every failure sparked a new plan. She turned to the younger officers beside her. Listen, she said, her voice firm. They believe we are weak. That we will break. Let them believe it. They have never faced humans before. They have never faced our will. Her eyes burned with determination, a fire that refused to dim even as alarms blared. The humans around her straightened, feeling a strange surge of hope despite the destruction. Above the planet, the first Xylarian scouts approached, massive vessels like living nightmares. Their shadows stretched over cities, and for a moment, the humans below froze. But then a small fleet of human fighters streaked into view, their engines bright against the dark void. They were tiny, almost laughably outmatched. Yet they maneuvered with precision, striking with a fearlessness that made even Vrel wonder. Somewhere deep in the fleet station orbiting Sol Prime, a voice crackled over the comms. Human ships are attacking. Improvising. They're doing things we can't predict. The Thari admiral whispered it, almost in disbelief. How is this possible? And for the first time, Vrel allowed himself a thought he had long buried. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity was different. Perhaps these fragile, stubborn creatures might change the course of everything, even now. When all seemed lost, the galaxy trembled on the brink. And the humans, unaware of the impossible odds stacked against them, prepared to strike. While the galaxy trembled under the shadow of the Xylarian Armada, Earth remained alive with determination. Smoke rose from burning cities, alarms screamed through streets, and chaos reigned. Yet humans did not panic. They did not surrender. Instead, they moved with purpose, as if instinct had trained them for this very moment. Families carried each other through rubble. Doctors treated the wounded under collapsing roofs. And engineers worked feverishly to reroute power to critical systems. In the central command hub, Captain Liana Reyes stood surrounded by humans of every age, race, and background. Scientists hunched over holographic displays, mapping enemy movements. Civilians, armed with improvised tools, operated drones and defense turrets. Soldiers adjusted weapons and shields while sharing quick lessons with anyone willing to learn. Every human present carried the same message: we will not go quietly. Liana's voice rose over the hum of machines. We do not have the largest fleet. We do not have the deadliest weapons. But we have something no machine, no algorithm, and no alien army can predict: our ability to adapt. Our creativity. Our courage. They think we are weak. Let us prove them wrong. Her words ignited a spark. Eyes that had been shadowed with fear now gleamed with determination. Even children played a role. Teenagers in simulators studied alien tactics, running scenario after scenario. Their small hands moved with precision, their young minds creating strategies no adult had considered. Every idea, every small adjustment, was logged and sent to commanders across the planet. Earth was alive with movement, a synchronized chaos where every human, no matter how small, contributed. Meanwhile, scientists discovered something astonishing. The Zalarians had patterns in their attacks, brilliantly complex, yet predictable in certain conditions. Humans, unbound by rigid protocols, began to exploit these patterns. Using modified ships, small strike teams navigated asteroid fields, energy storms, and magnetic anomalies, turning natural hazards into deadly weapons. The humans had no choice but to fight smart. They had no luxury of brute force. For the first time, outside observers, the last surviving alien leaders of the Thari coalition, the Zinari, and others began to whisper. How can such fragile beings survive? Many had dismissed humans as primitive, weak, and unprepared for interstellar war. Yet these humans were already proving them wrong, thinking in ways no machine could. Liana paced the command floor, observing the chaos with calm intensity. She stopped beside a young engineer struggling with a damaged communications array. "Do not worry," she said gently. "Every failure teaches us something. Every setback is a chance to get stronger. That is what it means to be human." The engineer nodded, renewed courage filling his chest. Around her, the humans worked as one organism, each pulse of effort driving the planet's defense forward. Beyond the planet, in orbit, a new fleet of human-modified ships prepared to launch. They were small, vulnerable, and seemingly outmatched, but each one carried ingenuity and daring beyond any calculation. Every ship was a testament to human resilience, designed with improvisation and unpredictability in mind. They were not just fighters. They were symbols. In a dark corner of the command hub, Liana allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of the countless worlds lost, of friends who had fallen before Earth even faced the Armada. And yet, she felt a strange certainty. Humans might be small, fragile, and untested, but they had one thing the Armada could not destroy: their will to survive. Their stubbornness. Their hope. As the first human strike team prepared to leave orbit, the sensors picked up the Zalarian scouts approaching. Their dark shapes glided through the void, silent and relentless. The humans below did not flinch. They had seen the worst and refused to accept it. Every weapon was ready. Every pilot was prepared. And somewhere deep inside every human heart burned a single truth: no matter the odds, they would fight. The galaxy watched, unknowingly, as humanity prepared to turn fear into action, despair into strategy, and hopelessness into defiance. For the first time, a glimmer of uncertainty touched the Armada. The humans were coming, and they would not stop. The silence of space shattered as the Zalarian scouts arrived. Enormous warships, black and jagged like living nightmares, glided toward Earth's orbit. Their presence alone made the human fleet seem fragile, tiny sparks against an endless void of darkness. On the bridge of Sol Prime's command station, Captain Liana Reyes watched the monitors, her jaw tight but her eyes alive with determination. She did not flinch. Humans had no illusions. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and untested. But they had something else: courage that refused to bow. The first wave of Zalarian attacks tore through orbital defenses. Shields shimmered and collapsed, satellites exploded, and human ships were torn apart in brilliant flashes of fire. Panic might have ruled any other species, but humans were not like others. On the ground, emergency crews moved calmly, yet urgently. Pilots prepared for sacrifice missions. Engineers rerouted energy to critical systems, and scientists calculated angles, predicting enemy movements before the Zalarians even acted. Every failure became a lesson, every loss a spark for the next maneuver. Then it began. The humans struck back, not with brute force, but with ingenuity. Small squadrons of fighters darted through debris fields and asteroid belts, using gravitational pulls to accelerate and change course unpredictably. The Zalarians, who relied on precision algorithms and repetition, found themselves confused. Their massive ships could not adapt to the chaos, and their weapons often overshot or missed. Captain Liana gave the order. "Now, use the storms. Use the shadows. Let them think we are weak, then strike." Her pilots responded with a mixture of skill and daring that seemed impossible. One small human ship flew directly into the plasma field of a decaying satellite, ricocheting debris at a Zalarian cruiser and crippling its engines. Another squadron weaved through a dense asteroid belt, drawing enemy fire, and then counterattacked with missiles launched from blind spots the aliens had not calculated, even from a distance. Vrel, the Thari commander, watched in disbelief. They are improvising," he murmured. "No species has ever done this." The humans seemed to think faster than their enemies, reacting with creativity, courage, and a kind of reckless brilliance that machines could not match. But the Zalarians were relentless. For every human maneuver, there was a counter. Entire squadrons disappeared, ships that had seemed invincible shredded by alien fire. On the ground, civilians huddled in shelters as warning sirens screamed. Smoke filled the skies, and the cries of the wounded echoed through every city. Yet humans did not give in. Soldiers, engineers, and ordinary citizens worked together as one living organism, improvising shields, rerouting energy, and launching counterattacks with unmatched courage. In one daring engagement, a single human pilot flew her ship straight into a Zalarian energy conduit. The explosion disabled multiple cruisers at once, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Her ship was lost, but the tactical advantage gained saved hundreds of human lives. Liana whispered a silent prayer for her, knowing that sacrifice was part of their strategy, part of what made humans so unpredictable. Across the command hub, engineers, teenagers in simulators, and civilian volunteers tracked every Zalarian movement, broadcasting instructions to fleets and strike teams. Each human acted with purpose, turning fear into strength. Hope, fragile and flickering, grew brighter with every small victory. For the first time, the Zalarians hesitated. Their endless calculations could not predict human improvisation. Their swarm formations faltered. Confusion rippled through their ranks like a virus, and the smallest human victory sparked a chain reaction. It was not enough to win the battle, but it was enough to make the Armada question everything. Captain Liana looked at the stars, at the massive enemy fleet looming above, and whispered, "They think this is the end. They don't know what humans are capable of." And for the first time, even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope stirred across the galaxy. Humanity had struck first, and in that strike, the impossible spark of defiance had begun. The battle raged, and the cost of defiance became clear. Human ships, small and nimble, were torn apart by the relentless Zalarian assault. Explosions lit the darkness of space like sudden fireworks of tragedy. Captain Liana Reyes watched her pilots disappear one by one, her chest tight with grief and determination. Every loss weighed on her, yet every loss taught a lesson. Humans were not invincible, but they were adaptable. Each failure became a blueprint for survival. Below, on the surface of Sol Prime, civilians and engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged satellites, rebuild defenses, and keep communications alive. Every hand mattered. Children carried supplies to shelters. Elderly volunteers guided fleeing families. The human spirit burned fiercely in the face of despair, transforming fear into action. Every life lost in the battle above inspired 1,000 acts of courage on the planet below. Humanity was proving that even against a superior force, heart and determination could not be measured in numbers. One of the most daring sacrifices came from Lieutenant Marco Chun, a young pilot who had grown up imagining space battles in virtual simulations. His squadron was trapped between two Zalarian cruisers, their firepower overwhelming. Marco knew that if he acted alone, he could give his team a chance to escape. With a calm that belied his age, he piloted his ship directly into the path of the enemy's weapons array, drawing fire and creating a massive explosion that disabled one cruiser entirely. His friends survived, carrying the knowledge of human courage into every corner of the fleet. The losses mounted, yet humans learned faster than the Zalarians could adapt. They discovered weak points in enemy formations, patterns in seemingly random attacks, and exploited the limitations of alien sensors. Scientists and engineers, often risking their lives, modified civilian ships into battle-ready vessels. Every tool, every device, became a weapon of opportunity. Humans fought with creativity that the Armada had never anticipated. Across the galaxy, the other races began to notice. Vrel, the Thari commander who had once doubted human strength, now watched reports of victories that seemed impossible. Entire Zalarian strike groups had been destroyed by small, improvised human squads. The Thari whispered among themselves, disbelief and awe mixing in their voices. How can such fragile creatures accomplish this? One muttered, "It is remarkable." Back on Earth, Liana coordinated the human fleets with unmatched precision. She sent teams into asteroid belts to use the rocks as shields, ordered attacks timed with solar storms to mask movements, and guided drones to sabotage Xylarian communications. Each plan was daring, improvisational, and deadly effective. The humans were learning faster than the Xylarians could predict. Their losses, though tragic, became the seeds of victory, and yet human emotion was never hidden. Each fallen pilot, engineer, or volunteer was remembered. Ceremonies were held in quiet corners of destroyed cities. Families and comrades honored the brave with tears and gratitude. This grief, rather than breaking them, strengthened the resolve of every survivor. Humans were not merely fighting for survival, they were fighting for each other. In orbit above Sol Prime, Liana took a rare moment to look out at the stars. The enemy fleet still loomed, vast and terrible, but she felt a spark of hope. The humans had learned to strike where it hurt, to fight where it seemed impossible, and to endure when all seemed lost. Every sacrifice had not been in vain. Every failure had made them stronger, smarter, and more united. "We are not done," she whispered to herself, voice barely audible. "We will endure. We will adapt. We will fight." Around her, the human fleet prepared for the next strike. They were battered, but they were alive and more dangerous than any enemy could imagine. For the first time, the Xylarian armada hesitated. Humanity's courage, creativity, and unyielding spirit were more than a nuisance, they were a threat. And in that hesitation, the galaxy saw the first glimmer of a new truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were revolutionaries, and their defiance had only just begun. Months of relentless battle had changed humans. They were no longer the small, untested species the galaxy had once underestimated. Every loss had become a lesson, every failure a stepping stone to strategy. On Sol Prime and across the human fleets, a new confidence began to take root. The humans had learned the patterns of the Xylarian armada, understood the flaws in their seemingly perfect tactics, and turned chaos into a weapon. Captain Liana Reyes stood on the command deck, her eyes scanning the holomap of the surrounding space. Xylarian fleets were moving, their formations still intimidating, but now predictable. Human squadrons, smaller and faster, moved like shadows, appearing where the enemy least expected them. Every attack was precise, every maneuver designed to exploit the smallest weakness. Humans struck with a mixture of daring and intelligence that the armada could not anticipate. The first sign of a real turning point came in the Vega cluster. Human pilots led small strike teams into asteroid fields that the Xylarians assumed were too dangerous to navigate. Using the gravity and debris as cover, the humans launched surprise attacks on supply ships and communication vessels. Entire Xylarian squads vanished in moments, their own weapons used against them by clever manipulation of energy and momentum. For the first time, an Xylarian officer reported defeat, not a temporary setback, but complete and absolute failure. On the surface of Sol Prime, humans celebrated quietly in the streets as news came in. Children cheered, engineers wiped tears of relief from soot-covered faces, and soldiers clasped each other in exhausted triumph. Humanity had not only survived, they had started to win. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were becoming the force that inspired hope. Even the other alien races began to take notice. Vrel, the Thari commander, stared at the reports with disbelief. "They are changing the rules of war," he muttered. "We counted them as weak, but they are extraordinary." The Zanari, once skeptical of Earth's significance, began sending messages of alliance. Humans were no longer just survivors, they were leaders of resistance. And their courage gave strength to others who had been crushed by the armada. Humanity's victories came at a cost. But the cost had become part of their power. Pilots and engineers who had once feared loss now understood its necessity. Each strike was calculated, each sacrifice purposeful. Lieutenant Marco Chun's name was remembered not only for his heroics, but as a symbol of what humans were capable of: bravery, ingenuity, and selflessness.